It's time for the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, answering your questions from the General's quarters every week, right here on Volquest.
Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast, presented by our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics, East Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store, focusing on natural products and organic remedies. At Smoky Mountain Organics. Shop them online at SmokyMountainOrganics.com or visit one of their 4 locations, all in East Tennessee, 3 in Sevier County, and of course their location in Knoxville, in West Knoxville, just down from West Town Mall there across from Trader Joe's on Kingston Pike. That is Smoky Mountain Organics. With Rob Lewis and Austin Price, plenty of questions to get to in this edition of the Mailbag Podcast, and we'll go right out of the gate with Shelby R14 AP. What happened with the DB from MTSU? I know he was in for a visit during spring. Did Tennessee pass? Did he pass, or was that mutual?
At bare minimum, it was mutual. I think Tennessee, they were okay with him, but again, right now they're trying to add bodies that they feel like can help them, and not just take bodies just to have depth, unless they are a one-year guy and where they're thin at a position and it would not hurt them with their numbers for the 2023 class. So, I think that's kind of where they're at right now. It's got to be a real dude, unless it's a one-year guy, and then they might just take some depth type pieces.
Yeah, because they're under the 85. They're not going to be up against that number there, but they don't want to take away from the 23 class unless, as you mentioned, it's a guy that they think can be a real difference maker for them over multiple years. CL DeMarcus wants to know, is NIL going to be the downfall of Rick Barnes? Rob Lewis, I think downfall's too hard. I don't think anybody knows where the downfall is. Is Rick Barnes, does he love NIL? No, he's a sweat equity coach. I think there's some things that he's uncomfortable with the concept of NIL, but I don't think it's a fair narrative to suggest that he's just blocking any NIL talk or any NIL life. At least that's my viewpoint.
To me, here's his viewpoint, and talking with him and seeing how things happen, he's got no problem with guys making money off their NIL. None. I think he likes it. The problem he has is handing a huge NIL. Again, this is my opinion. The problem I think he has is handing a huge NIL deal to a kid who's an 18-year-old senior in high school that's never been through a practice, never helped Tennessee win a game, never been through an all-season program, never been part of the culture. I don't think if somebody were to give Josiah James $2 million, I think Rick Barnes would be totally fine with that. If somebody wanted to give Santiago Vescovi $1 million, I think he'd be totally fine with that. I think what he has a hard time with, and again, this is my opinion, I think what he has a hard time with is the notion of someone who's never done a day of work inside this program landing a huge deal, when specifically more than any of the guys who are going to be his teammates. Again, that's my opinion.
But before we go any further, Rob, what would the money line be on the word parlay for the Volquest podcast on sweat equity being tossed out? Because when Hub said it, I was like, whoa.
It's a common phrase, man. It's out there in the NIL world. Austin, don't you agree, though, that for Rick Barnes, his biggest concern is the locker room when you're dealing with, only 12 or 13 guys, that you do have some equality. I'm using a different word there. Sorry if you put that one in the parlay as well. That you have some equality where you're not, where guys who have helped build your program up are not ignored to the point that a guy coming in is getting. Don't you think that's a big part of this as well?
Well, I think for right now, it's a certain fact. I don't know if it's a problem. It's a certain factor for a lot of college coaches in all sports, because right now you went from, your current team is pretty much pre-NIL. So unless they got a little under the table, they got nothing, to all of a sudden Wild Wild West. And so, I think 3 years from now, it's a different feel, because most everybody has gotten a little bit of something, coming out, maybe some more than others. But right now you're going from this group that has nothing to a group that is clamoring for every dime and penny they can get.
Rob, do you think it's different? Do you think it'll be different, not just for Rick Barnes, but do you agree with that? That it's
Yeah.
that once you get everybody in your program that's been through the NIL process as a high school senior, that it changes some of those concerns?
Yeah, I think it's like anything else ever. Once it's been in place for a while, it just becomes the new normal. I mean anything like anything in life. Hubbard, growing up, could you have imagined that the SEC would have, 2 7-team divisions, or getting ready to have getting ready to have 20 teams, and Arkansas. This is just it's an apples and oranges example, but I'm just talking about something that was unthinkable, when we were kids or when we were teenagers, that, Arkansas and South Carolina would be part of the SEC, Missouri would be part of the SEC, Texas A&M would be part of the SEC. That stuff's just normal now.
It's like my commitment videos, Rob. Not everybody likes them, but you eventually get to the new normal.
Or just anything with money, anything with salary. Like, you ever imagine, college football coaches making what they make, or if you want to make it financial, it will all be normal in a few years.
Unless the NCAA suddenly finds a way to stop it, which they're not going to, even though all that narrative and all that talk's been out there this week. It is not going to – that toothpaste is not going back in the tube, but regardless of whatever anybody wants to think that they can do.
Because the story from SI that came out, it's going to – like, what they're trying to do is going to violate, like, state laws in 30 states. Like, it's not going to work. So, like, again, people can bellyache and everything. And I'm sure there'll be tweaks. Okay. I'm not, I think they'll find ways to tweak it, but to think that all of a sudden you're going to just shut all this down is just, to me, tomfoolery.
Yeah.
Put that in the word parlay.
Yeah. When it went to the courts, Rob Lewis, it took it out of the NCAA's hands. And they're not going to get it back when that thing went to the courts.
Totally agree.
Yeah, just 100%. Not going to happen. Yeah, not going to happen. All right, Pine Mountain Vol. Can you discuss the options in the secondary and what position battles might be going into camp? Do you see Burrell, McCullough, and Flowers locked in starting role somewhere? Let's start with those two for him.
And until I see otherwise, I'm going to roll with 22 and 1 as the starting safeties, and we'll make this staff prove me wrong. Coaches are just creatures of habit, and they roll with these experienced guys that, maybe I'll be wrong, maybe I'll be shocked, but time and time again, we've seen, those type players, end up just still, kind of finding their way into their starting roles.
Rob, what position battles? I think we both tend to agree with what Austin says until Willie Martinez is not comfortable with those two for whatever reason. I'm with Austin 100%. I think you are as well. What position battles do intrigue you in the secondary going into fall camp?
I don't know if it's much of position battles, but where do guys end up? What Christian Harris is a full-time what? Brandon Turnage or Camille Hedden they're a full-time what? Are all those guys nickels? That seems to be a waste of some pretty good athletes if you're jamming all, and I don't think Tennessee will do that. Can any of those guys play corner?
Well, somebody's going to have to.
And where do they end up? So I think it's rather than position battles, it's just like who is actually playing this position. What are the bodies competing for that position? Turnage, Hayden, Harris, Deshaun Rucker. Where are those dudes? Where do they? Just who is actually a safety? Who is actually a corner? And I'm with AP. How many times have we seen it over the years? Did great. Just to get Eric Berry on the field, they started in a nickel defense, didn't they? So he wouldn't have to. So they wouldn't have to take Gerard Parrish out of the starting lineup.
And Eric came off the field after play one, and it took him till November to play Aaron Sears on the offensive line as a freshman. So those things have happened.
Hey, 2 words: Mark Levine.
That's
well said, AP. That is done there. I'm with you, Rob. I think it's where's Christian Charles? Is he a corner? Is he a nickel? Is he a safety?
I'll say Christian Harris.
Those guys are going to be, that's the unknowns. Is where do those guys play? Is Turnage a corner? Is he a nickel guy? Because they didn't go through spring. So many of them didn't go through spring. They moved guys to different spots. Like Flowers at nickel. What does that look like when you get into camp? Those are more than the position battles. I think you're right. It's who's at what position to even battle with when fall camp starts. I heart Vols. What was your biggest surprise in the NFL draft for the Vols? Anybody taking anything other than Theo Jackson getting drafted?
I was a little surprised a lot they went that high. I guess you could maybe say not when because of the number he ran at the combine. But yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that would probably come close.
I mean, I just think that's the number 5. So they all add up together. I mean, like the most they've had since 2017. If you take that year, that's the most they've had since 2007.
Why do you think Cade went as low as he went? Is the other question he asked.
I mean, I would venture to say the ankle, the medical side of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think,
And I mean, he's a guard. I mean, like he's not tackling the NFL. He's a guard. If he'll buy into being center, I think he'll play a long time because I think he's athletic enough to do it. He can do it. He's powerful. Fits it.
Yeah. I mean, he's not an outside guy, and they're going to take tackles before they take guards always. And I don't think the medical thing helped him either with the ankle. Megavol 98. While the defense was good on a per play basis last season, they were terrible at getting off the field on third downs. Why was this the case? What needs to happen to improve third down defense next season? Rob Lewis?
Better players.
I mean, I think the easy answer for me is pass rush.
Yes, sir.
That doesn't address short yardage, which I don't think Tennessee was awful at, but they weren't great. But I mean, pass rush. I mean,
get to the quarterback without having to bring the house. Helps you get off the field on third down.
How much does Tyler Barron improve? How much does Byron Young improve? What can each freshman give you? I mean, that's throwing a lot on those guys who aren't going to ride till the summertime, but can they give you 6 snaps a game that spells some of those guys to keep them fresher longer?
10 Ken, 1985, biggest news you had ready to go in the hopper that never happened.
Oh God, I don't know. I'd have to think. These are again, like we need to have questions and give me time to think. Like this on the fly stuff. Like somebody asked like the longest one, and I was like, it wasn't a video, but it was a written piece. It was David Oku. It was like 4 months. He was ready to go. Then he waited and he waited and he waited, and then he, pulled the trigger.
Well, Hubbard had a Jeremy Pruitt has been let go out of in the holster for quite some time.
Yeah, that was just because you had to be ready.
That's just preparation.
I had I wrote Kevin Steele was coming, and it ended up not happening. I wrote that story and published it. He didn't get on the airplane. He got a call and said, you can't come because administration said, no, that's not who they wanted to go with a defensive coordinator. And they ended up going with Sal Sinceri. And we know how that one worked out. But the plane was on its way. I know the plane and everything was on its way. Kevin was at the airport and was told not to get on the airplane because there wasn't a deal for him at Tennessee. That's not one that I held. That was one that I wrote that turned out being wrong. I don't know. I'd have to go back and think. Probably a recruiting deal because we've all written recruiting commitment stories and ended up not being guys that ended up being on staff or being on the roster when it was all said and done. Anthron, is UT going to get involved with any of the what seems like 100 players that Arizona State is losing? AP.
Well, I mean, they tried to get in play with Omar Norman Lott, but that ended up, he decided to stay.
Camp season starts with a Thursday game that'll start 2 days ahead. Unlike Nebraska, who will open their fall camp in July because they're going across the pond to play the Big Ten opener in Ireland. But Tennessee will open right around the 1st of August. I don't know the exact date, but it'll be right around August 1st because it's a Thursday night game. They'll get 2 days backed. It's back 2 days to open up their camp. Rob, any international names showing up on the basketball radar?
No.
Good luck finding those, right?
Yeah, good luck. Good. I mean, I anticipate we'll see some, but as far as individual names, no, I don't have.
I think we should send Rob backpacking through Europe in search of the next Vescovy.
The next Eurosplavsic. That'd be worth the plane ticket.
If he calls himself Ken Adams, then we've got real problems. There'll be a few pop culture people who recognize that reference at some point in time. All right. Considering the return trip from Roderick Robinson, do you think he may be the most realistic running back Tennessee is targeting?
I mean, I think that's possible. again, he's a military kid, so he lives out there. But technically, I think he was supposed to end up in Nashville at some point. So I mean, like his mom lives in South Carolina, dad's out in San Diego, which is where he's at. And so him coming in this weekend is a nice get for Tennessee. So we'll see. I mean, he's a bigger back. He's more of a bowling ball boulder kind of guy. And again, unless they even if Tennessee ends up talking more to the kid from Sam Houston State, we'll see what happens there. He's a 1-year guy, so he doesn't count. So if they had taken the kid from Minnesota, they would probably only have taken one prep back. Whereas, if they take the kid from Sam Houston State, I still think they're taking 2 prep backs.
In the 23 class. M. Hogue wants to know, will there be any commitments coming out of the big Memorial Day weekend on campus? Here's a question. Here's a question for you, Austin. Last kid to commit kind of spur of the moment that didn't have a planned date to release it on Instagram or Twitter or didn't have a date around somebody's birthday. I mean, who's the last guy that just popped on a weekend visit?
Daryl Jackson.
Is it really?
Wow. I think so. I mean, that was like, he come off that elevator and we're like, who is this? We're calling him, is he sure a take?
I mean, it just doesn't happen. Unless somebody's got something planned, it just doesn't happen.
I mean, this isn't 1997. Like, it just doesn't happen anymore. Who you get out of that weekend? I'm sure you get a few of them, but it ain't going to happen that weekend.
Right. Yeah. They all do an event. They may not all do them, Rob, at the podium with hats in front of them, but they've all got a plan for their commitment
video
or whatever.
Graphic.
What time we're putting it out on Instagram.
Yep. All of those things. Judd 865. Do you think that the rumored new uniforms will still be black, or do you think they'll go back to gray? I'm gonna say gray on the new alternative uniform. That's my opinion. I have no reason to believe that. Nobody's told me that, but I think they're gonna go back to gray.
I'm gonna go gray, and I think the helmet will be chrome.
Ooh, a chrome helmet. I'm gonna go gray helmet with a gray uni. No chrome. What do you got? Black or gray, Rob Lewis?
I don't mean to be little. I have a hard time getting fired up about the uniforms.
I know you do.
I'll go gray.
You want creams like the baseball team?
I mean, I'm not one of these people that gets upset about it, but at the other end of the spectrum, I also do not have a whole lot of excitement. I mean, if they wear black, that doesn't bother me at all.
Vol in LA, was Yuri Collins moved on from St. Louis pressure of tampering? I'm in the dark as to why he was not moved hard on by Tennessee. He likely would have started here. I think there's a lot of guys who likely would start here. That doesn't mean that they're going to get those guys. I don't know why Yuri Collins decided to. I mean, he obviously wanted to go in the draft, didn't like where he was at. But Rob, I don't know why he's back at St. Louis.
I've never covered him as a recruit. Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to that question. Volunteered 87. Is there no bigs in the portal, or is Rick just not pursuing any of those with any kind of success? Seems we've been in the running for quite a few guards, but not many bigs.
Yeah, I mean, there just aren't that many bigs in the portal. You can go look, and there's just not a lot of attractive guys out there. I mean, Tennessee has made some inquiries about some dudes, and that the lack of real quality in bigs in the post for the past month or so is one of the reasons I've been saying that I believe you'll see an international guy we've never heard of pop up, if not on the roster, at least as a target or two.
With the way the game is right now, Rob, with summer AAU stuff and development, are there fewer bigs out there than there was 15, 20 years ago? I mean, is it all guard heavy? I mean, all these AAU teams are basically playing 4 or 5 guards, playing a lot of 5-out stuff.
Well, kids watch the NBA, and those are you see Luka Doncic is 6'10", 230, 240 pounds. He's not playing with his back to the basket. DeAndre Ayton maybe is close to, a traditional big that you'll see up there, that as far as a starting 5 big time player. And he's a shot blocker and a rim protector, but he's also a, runner, and he's hitting the mid-range shots. I mean,
Carl Anthony Towns won the 3-point competition.
Yeah, that's a great AP. That's a great example. I mean, and Anthony Davis is the most dominant defensive player I've seen in college basketball in terms of playing in the paint, and he does everything in the NBA.
And it's why Oscar is coming back to Kentucky and not going in the NBA draft.
That's a great way of putting it, Hubbard. There just aren't that many traditional bigs. The guy, I mean, I don't want to say Kevin Durant and those guys have ruined it, but what's it sexier to think about being Kevin Durant or Robert Parrish?
Yeah, it's just
the last traditional big forwardish center guy in the NBA, Udonis Haslem, knocks down that 15-footer, plays 2 minutes a game for the Heat.
I know there can be a fine line between a fun home field advantage and being rude and disrespectful to individuals, but have you personally witnessed what some of the individuals, specifically Auburn fans, are claiming this season at baseball games in terms of fans being disrespectful?
No, when I've been there, I've been on the porch, and I've not heard anybody say a cross word about anything.
Me and AP don't sit with the public. We sit back on the porch when we go. But I will say this: nothing that any SEC player said he encountered in an opposing fan base would surprise me.
Yeah, I don't think that the notion that Tennessee's fans booed the injured Auburn players last weekend. I mean, I was watching it on TV. I didn't hear that. I didn't hear a bunch.
I saw the booing, but it was not the booing because of the injury. It was the booing because the umpire sat there and let them throw 44 warm-up pitches, trying to see if they could give it a go. And it was like, okay, enough's enough. Either he can pitch or he can't.
Right.
So it is what it is, man. I mean, when you're having success, people are going to try to drag you down one way or the other, and that's just the facts.
And Rob's right. There's a reason the moniker is it just means more, because that's not just to athletic department budgets. That's to the mentality that everybody has out there as fans in this league and all sports. Is our baseball team one of the most ridiculously dominant, talented teams you've ever seen, maybe in any collegiate sport?
I mean, yeah, they're good. I mean, they're dominant, but I mean, Arkansas was dominant a year ago. They didn't make it to Omaha. So, I mean, you still get a lot of hate,
it's a long ways to the Hayes in the barn for sure.
Yeah.
But look, they've been consistently as good as you've seen any baseball team. I don't think you can compare it, Rob, to other sports. I don't.
I'm with you.
I just think it's hard because and that's not a knock on baseball. I think baseball in a lot of ways is a harder sport than basketball, and is a different challenge than football. I don't know that you can compare it across the spectrum, but I wouldn't get into comparisons. I would just enjoy the fact that this team's, rolling through the regular season, number one in the country, and then we'll see what happens when they get to postseason play, when it gets really a different type challenge and a different mentality takes place there. But this team certainly seems to be built for it for sure. What player in the secondary has the highest upside? Christian Charles? Brendan Tunch?
No, I would go Christian Charles because he can play multiple spots.
And I also think you don't know what his ceiling is because he didn't, much like Alante, I don't think he played a lot of defense.
Yeah, as a high school quarterback.
Yeah.
And a guy who got hurt last year as he was starting to come on. So I'd probably go Christian Charles. That's probably the easiest answer there. Lloyd Vols. While players have always been paid under the table, do you think UT and other big schools with administrations that were not supportive, laxed in the recruiting gray areas are benefiting more from NIL? Seems like we struggled to compete on the shady front with our competitors who knew the NCAA would never come down on them beyond a hand slap. Tennessee struggled to compete the last 15 years because they've had 5 coaches and they've had 5 athletic directors and they've had 3 or 4 chancellors and 3 or 4 presidents and
67 strength coaches.
Yeah, and more assistant coaches than anybody could ever count or ever want to count. That's where the Tennessee struggles have been. That's just been the complete and utter inconsistencies in all those positions that have made things challenging for Tennessee, while other people in the state or in college football in the SEC have been more stable and not had the type of turnover. Yes, there's been other coaching changes, but nobody's had as many as Tennessee's. Look, it's catching up to Florida, right? Look where Florida's at right now. What's Florida's problem? Florida's problem is because they went McElwain, then you went Mullen, and now you're here. I mean, that's too much turnover in too short a period of time. And that's where Tennessee has been for way too long, and that's been Tennessee's biggest struggles. Central Florida Vol, now that Brew and Turntine are in the boat, where does Tennessee turn in the portal, or are they done? Could you see them taking the receiver from UCF? Also, is there any traction from the Arizona State lineman? You've already talked about that. What about other portal guys, AP, and the wide receiver from UCF?
Yeah, I think they would. I think they're bringing him in this weekend. I think they're going to give him a hard look. Is the best way to put it. Because I don't think you're not going to take every kid you bring in. That's not right. But I think they want to talk to him, see what he has to say. I think obviously they feel like his talent would help the wide receiving core. And then again, we'll see what they do with the Sam Houston running back. Do they get him to campus or don't they? And then outside of that, I just think it depends on the right fit. They're not just taking a body to take a body, in my opinion. And if you do, it better be a 1-year guy, or that's just not smart.
Rob, they've got to have some more numbers at the receiver spot. I mean, look, I know that you like Holiday and you like Callaway and Hyatt, what they did in the spring, and you've got those freshmen in, and maybe you feel comfortable, maybe you don't think they're ready. But you're going to have a hard time getting through a second straight season being solely dependent on 3 guys. I mean, Cedric Tillman played almost 800 snaps last year, 700 snaps for Javonte Payton and Velus Jones. You didn't have an ankle sprain. You didn't have a tender shoulder. You didn't have a whole lot to shut anybody down. I mean, they need some more guys that they're comfortable with, that are ready to play, to go and help Hendon Hooker. I mean, you can't just roll with 3 and get away with that 2 straight years, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think Cedric Tillman gives you a little bit of a false sense of security out there, because you get much past that. Jalen Hyatt's played some, he's made some plays, and there is just really, there's nothing else out there in terms of guys who are proven. But you get past Hyatt, who do you think's played the most snaps? Hubbard, maybe. Walker Merrill, Callaway before he got shut down. It gets, I guess, from Ramel Keaton over the course of 3 years, maybe.
Yeah, but it just falls off a cliff.
Yeah, it gets really, really thin.
It straight falls off a cliff. It's not even comparable, for sure. So yeah, you're right. There's a little bit of a fall. You've got one guy back who's proven, and that's it. And so you got to get some people there. And I think that's why the UCF guy is intriguing, because he knows your system. He would be a plug and play guy, potentially for you, because he would know how to come in and play at the pace you need to play and understand all your language and all those things as well. All right, last 2 questions out the door. This is from Rocky Topster. If the Vols were to get Tate, who would be the second receiver that they would go after? Would it be Hyatt or someone else, AP?
Cameron Seldon, Aiden Williams, they're to me the next couple after Carnell Tate.
And then Juwan Mitchell transferring or staying, he remains on this football team.
Yeah, I don't see him going anywhere. Where's he going to go?
Yeah, and of course the deadline is passed now, and he's not in at this point. So he should be here this fall. Will be here this fall. We'll see how healthy he gets and whether or not he can be a contributor or a factor for Tennessee in the linebacker rotation. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Smoky Mountain Organics Volquest.com mailbag podcast. For Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday.
You've been listening to the Volquest mailbag podcast every week right here on Volquest.